introduce the next panel entitled Agribusiness as Key to Inclusive Growth, may we call on stage the co-chair of Agribusiness Committee of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines Incorporated, Attorney Melquiades Hernandez III.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your support to our annual Arangkada Forum with your presence today. My name is Attorney Mel Hernandez, and I am the co-chair of the American Chamber Agribusiness Committee. In my day job, I work with Dole Philippines. Dole is one of the country's largest agricultural exporters of fresh and processed fruit, especially pineapples and bananas. And we have operated in Mindanao for more than 55 years now. Panel 2 will focus on agribusiness as key to inclusive growth and discuss our new agribusiness policy brief. We identified agribusiness as one of the 7 big winner sectors for Arangkada back in 2010. We also published a policy brief on agribusiness and a policy note. For almost a decade, we have been identifying the main challenges to the growth of this sector and recommending corrective policies that support its higher growth. Unfortunately, there has been too little progress, and the sector has continued to disappoint despite its importance to rural areas and especially to correcting the high incidence of rural poverty. We wish to thank the author of the policy brief that we have right now, Dr. Roel Briones, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute of Development Studies. Could we give him a big round of applause, please? It's just unfortunate that he could not join us right now. And also, our main guest for this panel, Secretary Dar, is also indisposed. But we are very pleased that he sent us one of his undersecretaries who is no less competent. In fact, I believe the department is very lucky to have this guy work in the department. And he has been part of the department serving the past 4 presidents. No? So it is my honor to introduce Undersecretary Ariel Cayanan to speak about agribusiness as key to inclusive growth. He is currently Undersecretary for Operations and Agri-Fisheries Mechanization of the Department of Agriculture. He supervises and controls regional offices, ensuring full compliance with department policies and rigorous implementation of rules and regulations. Just as a bit of a background on Yusek Kalayan, Engineer Kalayan pursued his Bachelor of Business Management, Masters of Business Administration, and Doctor of Business Administration at the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He then pursued his Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering and his Master of Science in Engineering at the Mapua Institute of Technology. He also took up his Master of Science in Teaching Physics at the De La Salle University and completed all academic units required. He is the first Filipino to be awarded the certification to install and operate computer-integrated manufacturing by the University of Louisville and Amatrol in Kentucky. He was appointed as Professor 6 in Mapua, the highest professorial rank a mentor could have in this institute. In fact, he was the youngest individual at 27 years old, to be exact, to be conferred the said rank. Following his remarks, Yusek Cayanan will join the panel with the panel moderator, Roby Alampay, Editor-in-Chief of the Business World, one of our longtime media partners. 4 more experts will join the panel: Mr. Simon Baker, Dr. Rolando D., Mr. Achim Falk, and Mr. Chris Ilagan. Dr. D will show a few slides that highlight several success stories of small farm enterprises. Please get set for an exciting and informative discussion. And please give a big round of applause to Undersecretary Engineer Kayanan.
Thank you very much, Mel, for the very generous introduction. But what I will be saying as actually are the message of the Secretary in his behalf. First and foremost, the Secretary not in his normal condition. When I say not on his normal condition, you know he is very energetic, but it is the enormous job that was given to me that actually prevent him from not being with you today. So members of the Joint Foreign Chambers of the Philippines, fellow workers in the government, friends from the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary may wish to start by simply saying good morning to each and every one of you. At the onset, we at the Department of Agriculture wish to thank the Joint Foreign Chamber of the Philippines for making us a part of this event and speak on the government's food and agribusiness program in line with the theme Agribusiness as Key to Inclusive Growth. Agribusiness development and market linkage are the cornerstone of the department's program to bring prosperity in the countryside. By strengthening our food and agribusiness sector, we ensure availability of quality, safe, and affordable food for all. We also support the expansion of small agriculture-based enterprise that provide rural livelihood and income. Agriculture growth will also allow the Filipino agriculture sector to compete ably against foreign products in both domestic and international. Leadership of our Secretary William Dar, we at the DA have been advocating for new thinking for agriculture. Build on 8 paradigms that can help farmers as well as fishers become more self-reliant, modern, sustainable, as well as market-driven and agribusiness entrepreneurs. The new thinking paradigms are some of you are probably aware are, but let me reiterate, will be farm consolidation, 5th will be infrastructure development, 6 will be roadmap development, which I and Rolly was mentioning a while ago in the table. And of course, 7 will be higher budget and investment for agriculture. And of course, last but not the least, will be legislative support. By this, we mean that there is bountiful harvest in our farms to ensure the presence of affordable, safe, and nutritious food for every table. It is common then that agriculture has become an art of science of production, but nowadays, agriculture will be simplified into F to F. That is what we mean farm to fork. I mean, when you say farm to fork, it involves production, manufacturing, industrialization, even packaging, going down to rationing until it reaches to the hands of the what we call end user. So, of course, sufficient quality rural infrastructure is in place to allow the efficient transport of goods and people. There is a robust supply chain logistic network supporting better farm product prices and farm incomes, and relevant farm knowledge and technologies are quickly and effectively mobilized, upgraded, and disseminated to boost more productivity. Hence, in agriculture, development, and modernization, founded on the principle of good governance, transparency, and consultative engagement, this is the work platform of the department. Agri-industrialization and agripreneurship as a strategy. At the core of this new thinking is inclusive agri-industrialization as a strategy to fortify the foundation of globally competitive, sustainable, and productive Philippine agriculture. The key here is instilling the spirit of agripreneurship because of its potential contribute to a range of social economic development, such as employment and sustainable income generation, improvement in nutrition, and overall food security. Our daring goal, double the income of smallholders, farm, and fisher folks in the next 5 years. Well, I think PSA data is going to our favor by the report. The growth is around 2.7, 2.8, and inflation decreases to less than 1%. And we hope we could sustain it, of course. Through all of this, we advocate for greater collaboration of agriculture corporation with our small farmers, provided that the latter should be given a just and fair share of the venture. This is what we call as inclusive agribusiness. We at the DA only serve as the conductor. The lead actors are the farmers, peasant folks, and of course, championed by the private sector. We've seen the partnership work when DA, local government units, and private sector joined forces in our efforts to successfully manage, control, and contain the African swine fever. Together, we strictly implement the 1-710 protocol on the ASF-affected barangays and the 24/7 animal quarantine checkpoints to prevent the spread of disease in the other adjoining area. The principle is control and contain those that have and protect those that are not still inflicted. I am committed, and we at the department are committed to strengthen the department engagement with the LGUs and the private sectors group in the remaining years of the term so that the bond between us can withstand the change of the political administration in 2022. Expected private sector participation will be expected more in agri-modernization. In particular, we will pursue a policy of active participation and partnership with private sector in 4 ways. And what are these 4 quadrants? Setting up of a more agri-based industry in the countryside and developing markets for agriculture products. Crafting and implementing a sustained strategy for promoting exports of raw and processed agricultural product, facilitating farm consolidation arrangement to bring about economies of scale, particularly for crops that requires mechanization and massive use of technology. And the last but not the least will be developing roadmaps in agriculture considering the private sector's greater capability to access export markets and funding for research and development. Ladies and gentlemen, just 2 days ago, the Secretary reported his what we call accomplishment for the last 100 days, or the milestone for the 100 days. And in a nutshell, allow me to impress to you what are this. In this leadership, first 100 days of his office, which we reached last week and commemorated through a simple program last Tuesday, the Secretary is very proud to impress. Actually, during this August first venture in DA, I personally informed him, Mr. Secretary, when the job was given to you right now, I think it was given to you in a bad time. And I hope we have enough time to do it. And the Secretary says, what are we gonna do? We have 2 conditions. Are we gonna go left when nothing is going right? Or are we gonna go right when nothing is left? And immediately he made an answer, we go straight. Not left, not right, but we go straight. So we have reaffirmed our partnership with the Department of Trade and Industry and the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and what we call Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI for brevity, to organize an agribusiness support for promotion and investment in regional exposition, or ASPIRE, in linking small producers directly to urban and profitable market. And these are just the beginning. We will be expecting more. We are working with LGUs initially with cities of Taguig and Pasig for the Kadiwa and Ani at Kita project, aimed at increasing the income of small farmers and fisher folk through direct and increased market linkages. And we are looking at linking Kadiwa at Ani participant with institutional buyers through their rice subsidy program. Additionally, we are crafting an entrepreneurship program that will encourage the Filipino youth to venture into the local farm industry. We will allocate funds to serve as a startup capital loan supporting young farmers to develop their own agricultural enterprise. With this program, we specifically want to motivate and encourage the young Filipino to take interest in agricultural activities. Filipino farmers are aging, 57 by average, and we must assure a strong labor force for the agri-fishery sector in the coming years. These, ladies and gentlemen, are just some of the major priorities and initiatives that we will pursue in the months and, of course, years ahead. The Duterte administration has invested and will continue to invest in ensuring inclusiveness in our developmental efforts. Our obligation at the DA is to make the result of these programs and innovations so tangible and valuable that the recipient themselves, hopefully with your cooperation and support, would ensure that they continue way beyond this administration. Agriculture is crucial in our people's well-being. In this effort to modernize Philippine agriculture, we have no time to lose. The era of protectionism is over. We are at the era of open, competitive trade. And if we are to survive in this new global atmosphere, we must keep pace with our vigorous neighbors in the world's fastest growing region. Philippine agriculture must become more productive, more competitive, more dynamic than it is today. We thus look forward to continuing support and cooperation of the joint foreign chambers of the Philippines, and we aim to raise the incomes and dignity of our farmers and fishers. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, the message of the Secretary. Good morning.
Thank you very much to our guest speaker, Undersecretary Kayanan. Kindly stay on stage to join our panel discussion. May we now call on stage the moderator for our panel discussion, the Editor-in-Chief of Business World, Mr. Robbie Alampay. Our first panelist is the CEO of Kennemer Foods International Incorporated, Mr. Simon Backer. Next is the Executive Director of the Center for Food and Agribusiness of the University of Asia and the Pacific, Dr. Rolando D. Our third panelist is the Operations Manager for Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand of World Bank, Mr. Akeem Fong. And lastly, we have again the Corporate Affairs Director of Cargill Philippines Incorporated, Mr. Christopher Ilagan.
Magandang araw, magandang umaga pala, almost magandang tanghali. It's a pleasure to be here. Dr. D, I understand, has a few slides to share, but before I call him up very quickly to present his slides, before we get into the forum, I wanted to ask a quick question to the Undersecretary, just to sort of bridge the discussion from the first panel to this. We were talking about tourism kanina, we're talking about agriculture now. As we all know, the current Secretary of Tourism did come also from the Department of Agriculture, a very strong advocate for community-based programs. Just a quick question, Yusek. What's the synergy now with regards to agriculture, tourism, particularly community-based tourism, and what that might lend into natural synergies between the tourism and agriculture sectors?
That is precisely right, because the moment Undersecretary then, Berna Romulo Puyat assumed as Secretary of Tourism, she needs not to adjust but just need some continuity, because she's a seasoned Undersecretary for DA. So much of the agro-tourism program were actually revitalized. In fact, we even support not only production of food, but more so infrastructure for agro-tourism. In fact, part of the program of what we call DA will be to support the agro-tourism road that will actually make rationing and at the same time We make sure that the what they call the accredited tourism area that caters for agriculture will be well taken care of.
Okay, two big wins potentially there with one stone. Let me call up Dr. D. I understand you have a quick presentation before we open up the discussions. You wanna stand there, sir?
Yeah, thank you. I have a very short presentation. It covers the three operating rural agribusiness models. Let's begin. Well, poverty in this country is an agricultural phenomenon. If you notice, we have the highest poverty incidence in the ASEAN, and you can see the numbers, and I don't have to go through it. It's easily 2.5 times that of the ASEAN averages. And this presentation, which will be covered partly by my friend here, Simon Baker, also later, it's about the triple bottom line. And what are these? There are 3 cases, documented cases. Rice farm consolidation of Pidig Ilocos Norte, the mayor. I invited the mayor to be here. I don't know where he is. Allow integrated farms in my region, Bansaran, Davao del Sur, and Pamora farms in Abra. So, consolidation means rounding up the farmers, I guess, and you have to mechanize. And what are these? We have before and after situation, after interventions, and individual farms to consolidated farms, and there are later updates. In fact, we're writing a business case about this. And bear in mind that the poverty threshold is about 100,000, or 10,000 per family per month. It's now close to 210,000 from barely 51,000 a year per hectare. They are now closer to 150,000 above poverty line. And what are these interventions? It has to be clockwork, engineering type of thinking. Well, the mayor is a civil engineer, as does Risa is here, is an engineer. You're talking about soil analysis first, organizing, mechanized land preparation, full inputs, low-graded, similar variety to achieve higher recovery, low interest loans, and many other interventions. Okay, and in effect, the triple line benefits is that was reduced poverty, we have efficient input uses and irrigation water use, and we have multiplier effects in the Ilocos Norte community. The other case, by the way, you're welcome to visit because this is also a farm tourism area in Davao del Sur, which is about 2 hours from Davao City. By the way, I'm from Davao City. I don't know if that's a good introduction, but I'm not in government, so it's okay. And what are these? Well, this is an insurgency area in year 2000, and he was employing few workers. Remember today, there's only 1 worker employed per hectare in agriculture, but now the coconut sap collectors were manufactured into coconut sugar and exported to Europe are earning above poverty line of 10,000 pesos per family per year. So insurgency is gone. And from a small number of workers, Ben, the entrepreneur here, now employs over 110 employees. Okay. And what are the interventions? Well, it's the daily sub collections. You have value adding. There's marketing. Ben Lau, by the way, is one of the largest exporters of certified coconut sugar to Europe. Okay. And what are the TBL benefits? Is poverty alleviation, definitely, and from shacks to hollow block houses. And there's wage income as well as entrepreneurial incomes. Pamora Farm was raised chicken in Abra. It's a slightly different intervention, but there's what's the experience? From nothing in 2002, something like 3 hectares, barren, now fully covered with mahogany trees. And the number employed as of the latest is about 28. There were only about 3 people employed. And you have a wage bill of about 240,000. And the Pamora Farm supplies range chicken to 5-star hotels in Manila. So they have breed selection, they have reforestation, pasture farm management, there's modern dressing plants certified, and they're doing contract growers now outside of the range farms. Okay, what are the takeaways here? Since I'm only given 5 minutes to present this. There's really great potential for triple bottom line, agribusiness, rural-based models. The critical element here, ladies and gentlemen, is possible full value chain intervention. They said that we can be competitive if the average farm cost of rice go down to 6 to 7 pesos per kilo. We can achieve that. Even Cheney Corporation and Leyte also achieved that. PDIG is achieving that. There's a tremendous poverty alleviation impact, but the product has to be market driven. What is interesting now is that Ben is also engaged in farm tourism. Why am I mentioning this? 7 million foreign tourists, over 80 million domestic tourists. So there is a synergistic linkage between agriculture, tourism, and even infrastructure. And the multiplier effect is even much more than the global multiplier effect for the Philippines, is even greater for domestic tourists. Just to end, of course, we have to quote a famous person. So, it says here, of course, he is very active. Bill is very active in rural development now, that of all interventions to reduce poverty, improving agricultural productivity is the best. It's the best. I'll end here and can be engaged in discussions later. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. D. Let me start by quoting 2 famous people right now, Undersecretary Kayanan and Dr. D. Both of you mentioned, the potentials and the great things we're already seeing in terms of, in particular, consolidation of land and integration for that matter. Let me start with that, because obviously as we talk about modernization, mechanization, and scaling up and unlocking the potentials of agriculture, one major point really has to do with consolidation. I just want to start by asking government, the academia, but also the private sector, what you're seeing on the ground. What's actually possible right now? Still with the realities of agrarian reform, whether from a perspective of formal policy or just the momentum of how politically sensitive it is in this country, but at the same time, the pragmatics and the innovations going on the ground. What's actually possible right now, and what are the schemes for actually consolidating land so that we could have integrated operations and scale-up operations?
Well, it's not only possible, it's already happening. There is a saying that We are not afraid of slow progression, but what there is afraid is standing still. I'll give you an example. For farm consolidation, it's a matter of policy. The provision or what they call implement or subsidy that we're giving right now, we do not give to individuals. We only give it to organize. And organization means consolidation also. Number two, there's no other way because the design of our farm implements, most of them, tractors, machinery, are all designed in order for us to meet economic of scale in a consolidated farm. So there is, but because of technology that we have right now, whether they are subdivided, there's a way on how you gonna equitably distribute the what we call yield. So it's very possible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Just so we are, at Kennemer, we engage in the cacao sector. And cacao, of course, is a kind of growing crop. So now you have a situation where you really are engaged also in increasing the footprint of the production, right? Okay, so the Philippines has great potential. There is a huge shortage of cacao production in Asia. To give you an idea, right? The demand for cacao at the bean level is around $3 billion. And Asia produces less than $1 billion. So in Asia alone, 2 billion we import from South America and from Africa today. That is the addressable market for us. And the Philippines is one of the few countries that have perfect climatic conditions. So the key really is to increase production. Now, to increase production, it means organizing farmers, facilitating financing, facilitating extension support, and creating market linkages. So the need for consolidation is there. And the models can be various, right? It could be smallholder farmers collaborating together in a cooperative structure, association, or even in a kind of, not a formal legal structure collaborating together. I guess the challenge is that effective structures of kind of expanding production need to be organized, and that last mile work is a lot of work, right? And the key now is when you want to scale is, because often what we see in the intervention programs is there's a lot of funding coming from international donors, from the DA, and the problem is once it comes to the last mile, it often goes to the same cooperatives. Why? Because they happen to be a bit more better organized and they can get that access. The key now really is for us, I think, as a nation, is to expand that footprint and find those other groups of farmers, and there are lots. Now, but that is an expensive effort, and I think now with Secretary Dar, also at the helm of the DA, it's a great opportunity to look at also the extension services in doing not just the technical intervention, but also kind of a bit more the soft skills of organizing and getting new producer groups part of the system.
Okay. That speaks to land. Let's talk about inputs to land. The policy brief makes mention, and as with many things, when we talk about agriculture in the Philippines, everybody brings up Vietnam, comparative land size, but very specifically and very explicitly, the policy brief makes mention and takes note, higher inputs particularly on fertilizer in Vietnam, more irrigation, more irrigated land as well. I'd like to ask Akim and Dr. D, why are we lagging, and what are some easy wins, some policy changes that you would like to see where we can catch up on these matters?
I write columns for Business World, which you always heavily edit. I'm just kidding. Under the banner of MAP Insights. We have to have a reality check. No? After 30 years of agrarian reform, started in '86, we made comparisons of productivity, absolute level productivity for the past 33 years, and productivity increases of major crops. We failed. We failed versus Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia. Now, make your own conclusion. And talking about the policy proposal, in in economics, as shown by the experience in other countries, land, inefficient land, or idle land, should be, good managers should be able to buy and expand his holding. The current 5-hectare limit doesn't allow him to do that. And I support the advocacy of the Foundation for Economic Freedom, precise to go beyond 5 hectares, maybe 25 hectares for individual entrepreneur, to about 100 hectares for corporation. Now, how do you help the rural community through extension? Number one, of course, is through the advocacy of my friend here, Simon. I could call him the father of cacao development. And it's not only productivity, because Davao today, it's the center of much awarded chocolate bars. Malagos Chocolate and Aura and maybe many others. And the private sector, you can take at several modalities to increase productivity. That's why government barriers for the engagement of this agent should be removed. Number one, private entrepreneurs. That's number one. Number two should be corporation. And number three, I'm very pleased that, well, Secretary Dar is not here, that Secretary Dar supports the establishment of provincial extension center. Because in the past, we relied too much. The local government code was a mistake, allowing extension under the municipalities. And number two, and believing that national programs, commodity programs should be it. It is not. Why? Because you have a national rice program. If there's money there, even municipalities which do not produce rice, they will produce rice because there's support. I'll stop here for now.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me say how excited I am to be here. My portfolio now is very large, but my origin is in agriculture. I'm actually coming from a farm and studied agriculture. I also before I came here to the Philippines, I worked in Vietnam, so I know that agriculture very well. And I think, as you said, it's not about the farm size necessarily. What Vietnam did, I think, was a lot about innovation and productivity growth through more input, and then the consolidation of farmers, right, and linking them up with the markets, so agribusiness and trade. Also, we saw, despite Vietnam now being a very successful rice exporter, they've become even more successful in other products. So the diversification to high-value product is key if you have a farming community that is rather small scale. So I fully subscribe that in the first instance, when we talk about consolidation, we should think about the organization of farmers and linking them to agribusiness and market. Now, specifically to land, I think there's still more work to be done in this country in terms of the land rights of individuals, of what they can do with it, the mortgaging, the tenure security that they have, even simple ways of how to have access to the land titles and so on. And there are still a number of farmers, quite many actually, who have only collective land titles. We're very pleased to work with the Department of Agrarian Reform on a new project that will hopefully accelerate the individual titling of these collective cloers that have been given many years ago. And there's a tremendous need for that when we have engagement with the land users, the farmers. The appetite and the willingness to engage in this and the prospect they see is tremendous.
Okay, so there are ways to play with what we have right now, and we proceed in the spirit still of innovation and can do. And the soft matters, as you said, organizing goes a long way. So I do want to get into the product, access to the markets and so on. I want to hear from Christopher and Simon on that. But I understand, Yusek, you have something to add as well on this last question.
So as not to repeat, of course, what I already mentioned, I'll go down to the operational side. You were referring a while ago about competitiveness, of course. Well, it is in nature to Filipino that they respect more of tradition, and tradition becomes their practice. Those traditions before are applicable, but as time progresses, they're no longer applicable. I'll give an example. The way in how we appreciate putting implements or fertilizer. The rule of thumb will be you always use four sacks of triple 14 and 4 sacks of urea. But don't we know that we have data for the soil that tells what exactly it needs? And in fact, what exactly the plant needs. The way on how we irrigate, of course, because of excessive water for one season, all of our crops are actually flooded. But not all crops needs to be flooded because there are some that needs for drip irrigation. The other side of it, of course, will be that there are research that until right now are still in the incubation. They need to be used like the seed variety. There are site and location specific variety. There are drought resistance. There are flood resistant. There are pest resilient. It depends on how we're gonna use them. But still right now when somebody hears this 222 variety yields good in this side, everybody follows. So we have to use technology. We have to use data that is available for us.
I'll seize on that, I think, to pivot a little bit and open up a slightly broader subtopic here, seizing on what the Undersecretary mentioned about data. I want to talk about technology, particularly bring in the private sector. I want to hear from Kennemer and from Cargill. Apart from the data, both on the highest end, Philippines now has a space agency, particularly investing in satellite technology, satellite imagery, and all the data there. And on the ground, you now have a lot of these entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, technopreneurs, however the millennials and want to call themselves right now. But what excites you about the technology right now? One, from the perspective of how it might unlock and impact the potentials for our farmers in the agriculture sector. And then on the other side of it, still unmet needs and potentials on the technology side that other people might still consider in investing in and filling in a gap. Christopher?
Yeah, I do also want to answer something about market access, but prior to that, on the technology question, Cargill right now in the Philippines, we're across the supply chain, but one of our businesses here is animal nutrition. Now we actually do have, we are developing software for facial recognition of your cows, of your pigs, right? That will allow us to basically customize the nutrition, right? Based on just the digital scan of these particular animals, no? And that will allow us to maximize the growth potential, right, of these animals. I mean, these are the sorts of things that we're playing with right now, right? But, I guess in the Philippines, it's not yet at that level, right? There are a lot of basics that we have to deal with for the time being. So far, let's say, of our animal feeds business, we are investing in machinery to make us more productive in the way we produce, right? But I don't think we have gone to the level of fully digitizing this entire supply chain. There's a lot of opportunity, right? I guess one of the things that would probably attract, and this will segue to my market access comment, would attract more of these technologies coming in locally, would really be to what Yusek mentioned earlier, a commitment to ending the days of protectionism, right? And we have seen it, for example, with rice tariffication, right? That was such a hard decision to make. But the fact that the government has done it and is dealing with the side effects of that, which we know are also severe, right, is a very good sign, at least to foreign investors, that there is a commitment to going down this path, right? And when we were talking about involving private sector, one way to do that is really promoting it also to the foreign investment sector. In our particular place, again, in our going back to our animal nutrition business, it has been raised recently actually to the administration. There's this old 1970s law that actually places a 30-year restriction period for even just users of corn. By being a user of corn, you're actually in the corn industry. And unfortunately, well, it was actually an attempt to open up the corn sector at the time, because prior to that, foreign companies weren't even allowed to use local corn, right? So, but you know, there was that step. And unfortunately, this 30-year divestment period in essence still remains, right? And I'm glad to see that there are efforts to study the potential change, right, of that. And again, it is moving in that direction. It is a symbol basically that the Philippines is open to foreign business in the local agri sector. So I guess these are the other one that I think will also help in so far as attracting foreign investments, foreign technology. This ease of doing business law that passed recently, we're starting to see improvements in FDA, in the Bureau of Animal Industries, insofar as the registration processes are concerned. And that, again, is a great showing that we're here to open for foreign business.
Okay. Simon?
Yeah, thank you. Just also to build on your comments later, but more on the technology side, I think for Agri, there are many kind of exciting technologies. I think one of the technologies that are more likely to be used, that we are using already and can be used sooner, are more the remote sensing. I think remote sensing, whether it's satellite, whether it's airplane-based or drone, really allows you to monitor the crop status, where it's planted, are you fully planted, how many trees do you have, right? So just kind of knowing the status of your farms. It allows you with pest and disease management, and it also allows you with soil moisture levels. I mean, there's a lot of good data available. The beauty of satellite data is that it goes back in time. So you can actually look back 30 years on a fairly kind of granular level already at soil moisture. And so this kind of leads also into how do you use that data? You use it really for financing. So if you want to finance an area, you need to know whether, because at the end of the day, climate, we are on microclimate. So you could be in a valley and have a totally different climate than kind of the hill next to it. But if you have 30 years of soil moisture data, you know that, for example, when El Nino hits, this area is hit first, but that area is protected. You can finance that area quite comfortably, right? So I think remote sensing is a very powerful set of technologies, and I think we are using it, and I think the industry will be using a lot more. But I just want to add two things, no? On technology opportunities, and it's kind of related to your point, Christopher, on infrastructure. For us, I think what we would like to see is just good data access, internet access throughout the country on the last mile. Earlier I mentioned the problems of last mile. If we want to do an inclusive business, we should not have to rely on middlemen in order to reach our end supplier. We need to be able to communicate to that end supplier by phone, by internet, so that we know that transactions are happening, that payments are made, and that there's transparency on payment. At the end of the day, it's really about giving cash to that farmer without you having to go through several layers. Which is and the second point is a very simple one. You know, the time that every small farmer will accept electronic cash, it's going to be a few decades from now, right? So we live in this interim period where we want inclusive finance, we want farmers to have an account, but they really need convertibility to cash. And so I think the answer there is increase the ATM networks in the remote areas. And I think this is an opportunity for Land Bank, is to have more cash out points. Because we can give money electronically, but if they need to travel 10, 15 kilometers to convert it to cash, they're not going to do it, right? And so I think that's a fairly simple opportunity. Data access and increase the ATM networks of the government banks.
Okay, many people have mentioned when it comes to opening up market access and opening up policies, liberalizing sectors, certainly the government has demonstrated political will on this. We're heading into elections as well. before we open up to the floor for your questions, I just want to throw a very general questions. If I could ask everyone to keep it short, 1 or 2 sentences. We'll keep it to the private sector muna, Yusek, para they can have their... Just 1 or 2 sentences on your policy reform wish list. Heading to the elections, things you'd like to see institutionalized before 2022 and uncertainty comes again. What would you like to see?
I would like to see institutionalizing of some of the financing programs for small farmers. I think the ACPC programs of PLI, for example, are very powerful. I think there can be more done on the Agri-Agra, how we can reform it. Maybe look at first loss guarantees by the government to really kind of channel more financing for small farmers.
We need more innovations in the rural sector. Innovations cover new products, new processes, new markets. On new products, for many years, the coconut industry was selling coconut oil, refined coconut oil. Now we have the likes of Franklin Bakewell, Axilum, Century, providing the world market with coconut water, especially Vita, coconut cream, desiccated coconut, and the like. That's really, truly value added. Number 2, new processes. There are new processes right now in rubber planting in Mindanao, a fellow like Jackson Dickey, shorten the gestation period from 6 years to 3 years with the new technology. And the other thing is that unless you consolidate, like PDIG, we have consolidated today 1,000 farmers and 1,000 hectares, you reduce transaction costs through input sourcing, credit, low credit, combined harvesters and farm mechanization, including crop insurance. PCIC will only talk to the co-op, not to talk to individual farmers. So in effect, consolidating production units and having LGU, entrepreneurs and the like, can do the job, because if you fly from north to south, there's so much idle land. So much idle land in the Philippines. And allowing the private sector entrepreneurs to invest, including foreign investors, can address many of these things, from organizational development to markets and technology. But our government has to wake up. We have failed in that 5 hectare retention limit for 33 years, and as shown by metrics of productivity, export, and the like. It's time to move.
Okay, I'm not representing the private sector, but thank you for asking me anyway. So I'll make it short. I think one is to continue what has been done with the bold step on the rice tariffication, to continue that with other crops and products as well, and doing it very sustainable, right? Being sort of even more prepared in terms of the support services that we provide to the farmers who might want to shift out of those crops and go into higher value crops. I think that's my key. The second one, I think, is continue with infrastructure and infrastructure services, or even broader logistics services, from the farm to market roads up to the ports, and everything that relates to it, right? The ease of getting through the ports and so on. And then maybe thirdly, things outside of the agriculture sector. This is about the regulatory field that we mentioned. A lot of that, I agree, actually can be solved partly through more technology, right? More automation on the border, on registering business, on registering land, and having transparency for all users. Thank you.
I'll be quick. I think you heard the one earlier on foreign investments in the rice and corn industry. Similar to what Akim just said, it's really continue moving in that path for other crops, right, and what have you. Probably one thing looming maybe among foreign investors that might be in ecozones. Cetera is something that we're hoping to see, come to an end, just so we know what that new regime is going to look like, right? And I can't, I agree with everybody that spoke about infrastructure and logistics. Finding a way to bring down these costs is something that will help us become a bit more competitive, right? And even maybe be able to convert some of our import industries today into potential export industries. So thank you.
Okay. So we'll open the floor to your questions. Yes, ma'am. Please, there are microphones at the center, and please introduce yourself and the company or group you're representing.
Good morning, gentlemen, and I want to thank you for everything that you've shared. My name's Ingrid Wang. I'm from Hawaii, and I'm here with my company called Eternal One Wellness, Medical Wellness. And I've been here now, it's been 4 or 5 years. The reason I'm getting up to speak with you all is because I'm not a local person. However, I see the kind of food and nutrition that people are eating and consuming, and it breaks my heart to see the kind of chemicals, processed food, fast food, anything, but there's nothing nutritious in the food. So I have been studying in the last 4 or 5 years to try to understand why are things so bad when there are places like Vietnam where, you know, the poverty or the struggles between the poor and the people who are wealthy is very, very drastically different. So then I'm asking myself, what is going on here, and why is it so difficult and challenging for the people who are marginalized to have a quality of life? About a year and a half ago, I watched a news show on, I think it was produced by CNN or one of the TV shows, but what is really fascinating that I discovered was that in China, under the chairman of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, I'm not politically engaged in any countries, but the point that I'm getting to is that with the Xi Jinping's new government of creating a system to raise the economic standard, the standard of living for farmers, within I think an 8-year period, 400 million farmers in China have been raised from the poverty level to middle class. And I think that is just amazing. And the video showed all the steps and all the local governments that took part in this process. So I'm inviting the undersecretary, the secretary, and all that. Please do not think about just rearranging the box or how do we just help a few, but create a system. For example, they were talking about the QR code where people can be the middleman, like Mr. Baker was talking about.
Okay.
The middleman is eliminated. People can bring their own products to a local seller and have it all negotiated and have a system in place and raise the standard.
Okay, I'll take a stab.
We need so much of
yes.
that.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
a stab, ma'am. I apologize only because we're running out. I'll take a stab, but first of all, thank you for really helping me synthesize what was discussed, touching on the same points. But I think it's an interesting question. It does go to, I mean, I'll ask the USEC, you must have some macro information here, but I'd also ask the private sector, why do I eat the way I eat? I mean, why is my diet like this? I mean, what are the insights on the Filipino diet? And is it for lack of option because of poverty, or is this market driven?
First and foremost, we have to go back from the vision of the president. The vision of the president is not only a provision of food that is available. It's not only available, it's not only accessible, it's not only affordable, but it should be with nutritional requirement. But we have to understand that so much has been damaged and done primarily to the soil. That is why there is a program that what we call the National Organic Agricultural Program. But the first step for National Organic, because that is farming natural, will be good agricultural practice. We also have laws regarding good agricultural practice. And in fact, not only regulation, but also accreditation on how you will be classified so that people have preferences. The other side of it will be that there is a recognition under this administration that it has not become a sole department problem, the whole of the nation approach, so that when it becomes food, we coordinate process to Department of Health. So there is now a coordination and collaboration with the other agencies.
But speaking of high-value crops, I do want to, I think it might be interesting. I'd like to ask the private sector, Kenmer, Cargill, any insights that you're seeing from the market in terms of increasing demand for healthier products, more organic products, high-value crops, and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see a lot of change in the Philippines over the last 20 years from, I think, pretty much no awareness of the need for organic or healthy food to already a lot more. And so I think, you know, what the lady is mentioning, I think we all notice that you know, the fruits are sometimes quite expensive at the supermarket, or the vegetables are not really available, don't look so attractive. So I think there's a lot of push to the market to produce more affordable, higher quality products that we all can buy in the supermarket or the web market. And I think we are seeing already an improvement, and I think we're going to see a lot more over the coming years.
Yes, but Christopher, where do you attack that? From the supply side or the demand side?
Well, I mean, where we're coming from, we do coconut oil production as well. And there is a demand for sustainable coconut oil. So we've developed a whole module with GIZ, BASF, P&G, good agricultural practices, as Yusek mentioned earlier, right? They get their certification, and once they get that certification, right, they're basically able, they have a ready market to buy. Our problem is being able to close that loop abroad, making sure that that demand for sustainable products remains out there. And that is what will continue allowing us to actually purchase their products at a small premium over market.
Okay.
Says here. I read times up, but there are two things. No? One is the development of nutraceuticals. Number two is the push for single origin cacao, single origin coffee, and other single origins, no? for the world market. And number three, there is no vibrant food industry in the Philippines, really under DTI, without a vibrant, diversified, productive agriculture. Thank you.
Okay, we do have one more question, please. We have time for just one more question. Keep it brief, please.
Me?
Yes.
Hello?
Okay.
Hi. I'm Cora Claudio. I chair the Sustainable Development Committee of the Management Association of the Philippines. And our main program is PRD, not whom you know, but Program on Reforestation with Development. And we're looking at what you're doing, like cacao, as part of that development, because that can provide livelihood, especially if you're growing trees that take a long time to grow, right? Okay, first question is it true, I addressed this also to Rolly, that we do not have yet any agroforestry ecozone according to Ching, and so we are trying to aim to have one. Number two, addressed to Mr. Baker, are you also in tea? And I'm just wondering why our country is not into tea when that is the second most drunk liquid in the world, no? And number three is, will you be interested in dealing with the owners of big tracts of land in this country are government and indigenous people. In the Laguna Lake watershed alone, where our program is focused on, we have dumagats who have more than 50,000 hectares. So in ATM, not the bank, but Antipolo, Tanay, and Montalban. So will you be interested to deal with us? If so, we will be happy to invite you as a partner.
Okay, so three key points there. Agroforestry zones, specific question about tea, and also what's possible in terms of working with the biggest communities and sectors that own land in the Philippines?
Thank you. Good question. First, very quickly on tea, could be interesting. You know, we have there's so many crops. We haven't really worked on it. It could be interesting. Cacao and agroforestry obviously is a very good combination. Cacao needs shade. It works better with a lower temperature. If you have a nice kind of canopy of trees, integrated farming, multiple layers is the better, more sustainable way of farming. And I think another point which you did not mention, but maybe you're thinking of also, is the possibility of reforestation and carbon markets. And so we are, as a company, actively looking at carbon financing to help as a sustainable way of reforestation and productive forests with fruit trees as well as timber trees together. And I think the big opportunity there is the ancestral domains, right? And so that I think is an excellent example, and I agree as a policy suggestion also, we should encourage that further.
Okay, I'll let Simon, having answered that already, so we could quickly squeeze in one final question from the floor. Okay, well, let's have both questions at the same time so we can wrap it up. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes. Hi, I'm Danny Dale Alolor from Meloy Fund. Actually, my question is a bit more on the fishery sector. So, Philippines is very known for world fish producers. So, what solutions out there to help keep our seafood in check? And you've mentioned a while ago that in 5 years, we're trying to improve the income of the farmers and fisher folks. So my question is, what interventions has been done by the government and the private sector to address the income of our fisher folks?
Could I just get in the whether it's related or not, just so we can announce that.
As for me, my question, I'd just like to pick the brains of each of our panel members here. The performance of the agri-sector is at best described as erratic. Actually, it's dismal. And it has been for several years, even decades. We're not lacking in natural resources. We're not lacking in talent as Filipinos. If there's one thing that you could change, if there's one thing that you could change in the way we do things on the agriculture sector, what would be it?
Okay. I will let Yusek Kayanan take the question on fisheries, and I will ascribe one word each for each of our remaining panelists to answer that question.
Okay. Agriculture is land and water. Of course, since we are archipelagic, it's very important. One, we've been exercising closure season, and that is one way on how we address sustainable fishing. Number two, while we are distributing bangkas, we make sure that those we are distributing are not overfished. There are also, in coordination with DNR, we've been doing marine protected area, especially the sprouting areas wherein we have to protect the coral reefs. And four, to complement what we call the thing that we've been missed during the what we call closure season, we've been intensifying and inviting more of aquaculture. These are more manageable. So for the other side of it will be the losses. Remember, in the high sea fishing, around 40% will be considered losses. So post-harvest facility, fish landing, and the rest of the what we call mechanization had been induced also.
Okay. So we end with a wish list again. We already had a stab. I mean, I think it's reasonable. We took a stab at synthesizing to one policy reform earlier on. Just to wrap this up, because we're out of time, one word each, what would you like to say?
Well, it's very hard. I was thinking one word, right? I think, but I just want to say two sentences. I think the problem with agriculture, and we talked about how hard it's been, etc., is there is no silver bullet. And so since I can only choose one thing, I would want to say what we see with the government right now, our comprehensive policy, we need to continue with that comprehensive policy. And my one advice would be, and I think this has been a bit my theme this morning, is think farmer-centric, think last mile. So I think if we think as a delivery of the of the collective suite of services, if land ownership, finance, all these things, we need to think up to the last mile. How does it work for these farmers? Otherwise, the policies will be there. We have beautiful laws, but there won't be any economic activities. So I think that is just kind of a point of view we need to have as we design our policies.
The relationship is land access, investment, productivity, competitiveness.
Yeah, I agree. We can't it becomes very buzzwordy if we want to do it in one word, right? If I want to say one word, it's more market-driven and sustainable agriculture. But of course, that's very broad. I think what Simon said is right. I mean, we need comprehensive reforms and investment from both public and private sector.
I've said everything I wanted to say, so I'll say something new. Sustainability and probably farmer prosperity. Those are the two.
Okay. So we're out of time. Once again, thank you. It's been a privilege. Please eat well, eat healthy. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay. Aloha.
Many, many thanks to everyone who joined our panel on agribusiness and made it a very interesting discussion this morning. May we please ask the whole panel to stay on stage for a quick photo opportunity. While our speakers are having their photos taken on stage, may we please encourage everyone to actively participate in the discussions today, especially during the open forum. If you have any questions, please approach the microphones on the floor and wait to be recognized by our moderator. If you have additional questions after the forum, please do send them to forum@arangkadaphilippines.com. Please also tweet about the event and use our official event hashtag Arangkada Forum 2019. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn, so please connect with us. Don't forget to complete and submit the evaluation forms and give it to the registration counter at the ground floor after today's session. Your feedback is very, very valuable to us. We would also like to thank our sponsors and partners without whom this forum would not have been possible.